Hello, everyone, and welcome to this discussion with Creative First. Our guest today is none other than Shibashish Sarkar, Group CEO, Reliance Entertainment. Shibashish is a chartered accountant, company secretary, and MBA with specialization in marketing. He has earlier worked with Viacom 18, UTV, Disney, and Godrej Sara Lee. Shibashish, welcome to this very interesting discussion with Creative First.
Thank you. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. I mean, it's always exciting to speak.
Shibashish, the last couple of years have seen an explosion in the creative content sector. What is your perspective?
See, I think if you look back between the last probably not even 2 years, I'll probably put it something like last 3 years, and then the period before that, and I think probably take a journey from last 35 years. I mean, if you look at this overall content industry for a longish period of time, almost for 100 odd years, this content industry used to be known as the film content production industry. Like in India, we used to like a 100 years old industry in the film part. In the early 90s, we have seen the advent of the television. So that is also now almost a 30 years old industry. Every time a new platform, a new distribution platform has came into our life, we have seen the new kind of storytelling, the new style of storytelling, and also the consumption pattern. Everything has changed. I mean, when you tell a story in 2.5 hours with a 22-minute story for a television, it changed dramatically between that phase. What we have now seen in the last 2.5 years, where you started the discussion, is that broadly with the advent of the significant number of streaming platforms which have seen India as a hub or India as a destination point, we have seen it's almost, in lack of a better word, I'll probably say that this is probably the IPL time for our creative or storytellers situation, because the kind of talents which have grown up in the last 3 years, that whether the talents in front of the camera, talents behind the camera, the writers, directors, technicians, artists, we have seen that in last 3 years, what broadly has happened is that global's largest platforms have seen India as a destination. There is a reason for that. And as a result, Indian storytelling opportunities have got a great medium and is a very democratic medium to tell those stories. So this is probably the third phase, what we are saying, that we have seen the film phase, we have seen the television phase, probably now the content creation for the streaming platform. Extremely interesting space and the interesting growth what is happening in the country.
I like the analogy with IPL, and it's also attracting a lot of young audiences. So, from that perspective, what do you think? What are your views on animation and gaming, and what is the growth that you see?
So I'll give you some example, and I think from that earlier point what you raised, I'll also tell you that why that India, and that's also happening for the animation and gaming for the same set of reason. That why India is becoming an important phase, and why is this trajectory happening? See, if you look at the global content situation, the largest market, which is North America, in the North American market, the streaming platforms or the television platforms which have came up are already cannibalizing each other, because it has matured to a large extent. Every consumer must be having already 8, 10 or more number of subscribers. You have that many population or the paying customer. So definitely the large platforms like whether the Netflix, Amazon, Disney Plus, HBO Max, Apple, I mean, you can rattle down 15 platforms. For the next level of growth, they have to go global. Now, if they have to go global, they have opportunities to go to Europe, or they can come to Asia, because in our customer or consumer. So definitely all of them have gone to Europe, but in Europe, the numbers are less. So of course, larger number of population have an ability to pay, but the number of paying customers are, because being the size of the population of the country or the continent, that makes it a reason that the next phase or the next big opportunity for them is Asia. And in China, none of them are allowed to open their platform. So none of the large global platforms are allowed in China because of the regulation reason of the government. So there is no other choice but to look at India as a destination point for the large platform. So what we have seen from last 3-4 years back, that the platforms are coming to India from a 1.3 billion population story the paying capacity, and the consumer is a large consumer phase. So we will get the consumers from this geography. Now, what has happened at the same point of time, and that will come to your point of the animation and gaming also, that India in the over a period of last, I mean, one was of course a fact of life, and other is over the period of last 3 to 5 or probably 5 years. Uh, the fact of life of the matter is that in India, the young population, when we define as a young population, anyone less than the age of 30, is 65% of the country's population falls into that bracket. Okay, unlike a aging country like a China or aging country like a Japan or many of those countries where the population is aging. In India, 65% of the population falls in that age bracket. Second, data cost post Geo launch is virtually zero or negligible, right? So the data cost has gone to like a 9 cent, 10 cent per GB. Now, these two combinations, if you put together, a significant portion of the population are consuming content, and whether that content is streaming content, whether the content is gaming content, or the content is animation content. So gaming, I'm in this industry for almost last 25, 30 years. In the gaming, in the last couple of years, the kind of growth what we are seeing in the country, because a significant amount of population in the country or the young population in the country are getting hooked onto the gaming and playing games. The biggest examples or the end results of many of those examples we have seen, like we have seen probably 6 months back, a company like Nadara, which got floated in now more than $1.5 billion valuation. So what is happening in the gaming space or an animation space, each of the sectors, if you look at it in the last FICCI report, each of the sector is growing almost like a 25 to 27% CAGR year on year, which is a significant growth phase. A young population with an ability to consume content without thinking for the data cost is definitely what, I mean, you are getting the time of a consumer. Now you know how best to utilize, whether you best utilize by showing him a streaming content of Netflix, or you want to take that audience's time by giving him a great games to play, and animation is a part of the overall content story. So great news or a great situation for definitely both gaming as well as an animation situation. Both the segments, if you look at the last FICCI report, are all growing between 20 to 30% of CAGR year on year. And very soon, as we foresee, that probably next 2 to 3 years time, gaming as an industry will be playing one of the largest salience in the overall media and entertainment, at least in India parlance point of view. Globally, it's a large, huge industry. In India, still the thing which we are still not seeing that much of an opportunity, that not much of growth in the gaming is probably the console piece. But whether you talk of mobile, online, whether it's RMGs or every kind of options or esports, which is the next big phase which is happening here, we are seeing significant level of churn or significant level of growth in that phase.
So I think from the battle of the streamers, it's going to become the battle of the screen time, from what you just said. My next question was about script development, but I'm going to make it two-pronged because we were talking about animation gaming. How does a young professional or somebody who's already, who's a budding writer, make the script into reality, both from a content industry perspective and, including game? Because I think that's also a way of storytelling.
Yes, absolutely. I have experience of working both in a console as well as mobile gaming phase, as well as in the story, as well as in the content creation stage. It is so I'll tell you that both segments, while both are storytelling, it is a slight different route for both, and I'll take one at a time. So when you look at from one who is developing a script, from a content creator, from a say a film or a streaming content or a television content point of view, one thing which at any point of time any writer has to keep in mind is who is the ultimate consumer, the audience. These businesses are sometimes it looks at some level like a B2B, but ultimately it is the audience which will judge a level of a quality of a content, right? So it is extremely important to understand that what is the flavor of the time and what you are writing, which will ultimately see the canvas probably 18 months, 24 months, 36 months down the line. Sometimes some stories take that long a time, or maybe a longer time to see ultimately read.
I want to interject here and ask you, why do you think the story really takes that much time, just for the audiences to understand, and they should be part of that experience?
So I'll tell you. let me give you a example which is there right in front of, right in front of me right now. I mean, though that's probably an outlier. Uh, we are releasing one of the film called 83, which is based on based on the India's 83 World Cup win. And as of now, it is slated in the month of December. Um, the first time the right of the film was taken and to make it happen was in 2013. It took 9 years time, and it passed through different journeys. And as so that I'll make it. So that I can clarify that point a little bit. Is that not necessarily every time it is in the hands of the story and hand of the writer. So when a writer writes a story, and of course he wants to cater to an audience and want to tell a story, his aspiration is to go to the to make it develop and package and release as quickly as possible. But the first big challenge is once a writer thinks that a story has been written and which can cater to an audience, naturally then the question comes that who is the storyteller? So you identify a storyteller, right? So you approach a director, or if sometimes the writer is a director himself and writer has an aspiration to direct himself. And then the question comes that are you approaching that who is going to be the producer? You get a director. If you're the director yourself, then you are developing it yourself along with a set of other writers. If you are thinking that there should be another director who should take this responsibility, then you take some other director, then you get his creative views and ultimately develop a story to its finality, at least from a screenplay point of view. And then you are approaching the producers whether they will want to take an interest in a similar kind of a stories or not. Now, when a producer comes onto the subject, producer thinks not only creatively, but producer also has to start thinking whether commercially it makes sense for him. Of course, the creative greenlighting is first. So producer takes his time in going through the script, going through the analysis, thinking that this kind of a story will cater to his audiences or not. And if creatively they are okay, subsequent to that, they will make all their numbers analysis, budget, revenue analysis, etc. to think, okay, this is a story I want to greenlight, and whether it makes sense. Whether it is commercially okay or not. Second timeline post this, which takes and which is many point of time is the market reality. Now you are in the critical part of packaging a story. What I mean packaging, that you have to get your actors, you have to get your talents, you have to get your music guys, you have to get your DOPs. That's called basically the packaging the talent along with a particular script. Sometimes it takes months, sometimes it takes years to get a talent of choice. Even if a talent likes a script, and if the talent says, okay, I have a date 2 years down the line, and if the talent is of that scale and choice, the producer may very happily say, okay, I'll wait for 2 years, no problem, sign the contract, take a advance, and I'll wait for 2 years. Or some point of time, it takes that much of a talent, that much of a time to pitch a story to multiple actors and multiple level to show to get their interest level. Same situation also happened before reaching the producer. Means once the writer and director comes on the board, it may take that amount of time to get a producer. Sometimes the writer approaches the producer directly, and producer takes the time to get a director. So all these things, and you will appreciate that many of these things cannot happen in parallel.
Yes.
Unless you complete a script, there is no point of getting a director on the board or pitching to a producer. Unless you get a director on the board and the script written, there is no point approaching a talent, because talent means actors and actresses, they will like to read and then we take a call. After you get all these things in, then somebody has to think, okay, now for a financial viability, how the producer has to think how is money, right? And then goes to the actual execution of the production stage. So it happens in multiple phases. And a great story always finds its destiny. And sometimes we always hear stories. Some stories are there for 5 years, 7 years, 10 years in a can, and then find out a way and then becomes a history. In the case of gaming, the games when you say the storytelling in that game, that get created. So there is no different set of writers as such. So it is everything is in-house for the producer. When you say producer, they are called studios, gaming studios. So gaming studios take a call that what is the kind of storytelling they want to put into the next game. And game is much more engaging experience with the gamer, who is the ultimate consumer, right? So the studio takes a call that what is the product they want to take or they want to start for the next year or for the next season and etc. Once they take a call that the kind of product what they want to take in the next year, that happens in its own greenlighting phase and discussion. The basic, it goes all the way to the basic of the situation that how many consumers I can engage, how many gamers I can engage, if it is a free-to-play games, what is the kind, at what level of engagement, what are the buying will happen and how my revenues will come. So it goes into multiple level of details and analysis. The storytellers or the basically the directors or the narrators, they are a part of the studio. So then the studio engages them to tell that game through the storytellers and the directors. It is not like a normal case in a fiction or in a film or a other content world where somebody else writes and brings that idea. It's not that it does not happen in game, but largely the gaming studios, the large gaming studios, they take their call and when they want to take it up, and then engages a storyteller or a narrator that how they want to. If the key in gaming is how you engage your consumer or the gamer, so and how you get the monetization out of them. So because all games are today, at least in the online or the mobile world, games are free, or we call it a freemium game. So once you start playing the game, then you have to take their engagement and need to convert them into that they should monetize something. Otherwise, how your revenue is going to come. So those are the critical aspects when somebody is telling a story through the games. It's slightly different, but ultimately you have to, the core, if you look at a core point, every storyteller or every writer is only successful if they can engage the audience, whether that audience is a gamer or that audience is sitting in PVR Phoenix thing or that audience is sitting in front of a Netflix show. If you can engage them, that's the only way the monetization can happen.
So maybe then when we're looking at screen time, we should also look at how many stories which are seen on cinema can also be played as a game. It's quite possible in the future.
Quite possible. I think it has, I mean, if you look at in the past, there are several examples where film IPs have came in and it has gone into the games. And sometimes gaming IPs have came and in the past. In India, we can see that I could take an example of Singham. Singham as a character becomes an iconic film and a sequel and a franchise of his own. The same character gets into animation as a Little Singham and become a animation franchise of his own. The same character goes into a mobile game and becomes a character there. So I think it and vice versa. I mean, there are so many stories or which has happened the reverse.
What new technologies excite you in the M&E space?
So I think there are several things which are happening. Of course, when you look at the technology also, there are two areas. One area is that how you are using or embracing the technology for making life easier, for making the execution easier. That is one part. But the major activity, what is happening is that how you are embracing the technology for making audiences' life easier, or giving the more reasons for audience to celebrate a consumer content, right? So if you look at especially the streaming platforms in that part of the world, there are several concepts like that. There's a concept called mass personalization. So when you say mass personalization, it is basically an ability to offer a personalized content, but in a mass scale. Okay. Small example. I'm not necessarily the same reason, but I'm saying small example. Like if you are seeing a content in a particular platform, and if you are seeing a particular kind of content, the analytics capture that what are your choices and etc. Next time when you open up the screen, it throws that kind of content to you, right? The second concept is there are basically when you call you take an examples of AI or you take an examples of big data and trying to cater type of choices and preferences for the audiences. So I think the streaming platforms world, they take and ultimately what are the best usages or analysis of the data by which the audiences, preferences and choices are being catered to them. So there is one level of growth aspect which is happening on that front. The other level of aspect which is happening is from the creator side, when the creators are trying to think that how I can create a new experience. So the usage of AR, the usage of VR, which are the new experiences which one is catering. Even at the third segment, what we are talking is that how the executions are happening, right? When let me give you a live example like the film, like say last year before, I mean 2019, before lockdown, the film, like I say, when it happened, like I say, Tanaji. Okay, uh, almost entire film happened in a studio, correct? Which in a different kind of a situation, when a storyteller wants to make a film like that, the requirements of the film will be very different. It will be very an outdoor shoot and with real requirements and etc. But the execution phase, or even the production phase, now the makers are using substantial usage of the VFX, CG, and the versions associated with it to make the storytelling more spectacle, in a much more controlled manner, and with much more with uncertainties in control. Let me put it like that. So the moment you are using the technology for for telling your stories, you are making it a lot more foolproof. Side uncertainties upon earlier phase. To answer your question, there are three or four areas what we are saying that the is being used, and there will be more. Definitely, one is at an audience to consumer phase, that how to make audiences and consumer life more easy and more intelligent. So there is a lot of usage of AI in that place, big data in that place, and we are trying to cater exactly what is the audience looking for, or trying to offer that menu card in front of him, looking after analyzing the choice of the audience. So that is one is happening on the marketing distribution side, trying to understand the consumer preference. The second situation, what I was telling, is basically that when you look at the execution phase, you are definitely trying to make the execution in a much more scientifically controlled manner, and you are not necessarily depending upon the lot of other paraphernalias which you should do at a similar production. So you is a very much more controlled environment within the studio. You are doing everything, and then balance you are taking to a CG VFX studio and completing the film. And the third phase is, of course, the new experiences when you bring in the filmmaking for the audiences, the usage of AR, VR, and etc., which are coming forward. So those are the broad segments where you see the usage which has been increased.
Do you think technology is expensive, especially when you spoke about Tanaji? While the upside of that is certainty, and you can plan everything in an organized fashion, what happens to costs?
Yeah. So to answer your question, I think what happens in cost is that certain element of cost in your line item, certain elements of cost goes up and certain elements of cost will come down. To give an example, like when you are largely creating a film in that environment, of course your cost of VFX and CG will be substantially high. Your cost also you have to spend a lot more time on pre-planning. So you have to plan well ahead, probably 6 months, 9 months, sometimes 1 or 2 years ahead of the situation. So it is ultimately like you have drawn up everything to know exactly what are the physical elements you are taking in every shot, and what are the elements which are coming in the background, and how you are marrying them in a studio or through a VFX and CG. And from your shot taking point of view, from your preparing the actors point of view, even the actors have to emote without the physical elements around him, right? So the actors at the next level, I think what people are creating that physical environment also in the form of a panel, and that environment is coming and the actors is emoting depending upon looking at what is around him. So those elements of cost will definitely increase. What will come down, on the contrary, is that lot of your props, lot of your physical requirements, your number of days, everything will come under much more control. At an overall level, it still looks. At an overall level, sometimes it still looks more expensive, at least from an Indian experiences point of view. But the spectacle what it gives, the control what a producer have or a director have to reach the ultimate output, and ultimately he can exactly balance the to what extent of largeness or to what extent of spectacle I will ultimately bring it on the canvas. It probably that revenue probably is outbid or does more justice even if the cost has increased.
Shibashish, which are the creative roles that may become redundant in the next few years, either due to automation, tech capability, or because just there may not be a demand anymore?
I don't think. See, there are a couple of things which one has to be clear. I think there is no substitution of creativity. Let's agree that aspect. There is no substitution of the storytelling. There is no substitution of a thought that what our audience's heart, right? So there are certain elements. There are no substitution from a storyteller's requirement point of view, right? So in a certain elements of the overall, there is nothing which you can substitute with a machine learning. Okay, one can have tons and tons of data to say what audience is like, but still a scriptwriter has to come and say, well, yes, to create a new story depending upon what audience is like. So that aspect, that part of human aspect, you cannot change. What definitely will change over a time, or it can reduce an impact on the scopes and etc. And anything which can be replaced by a machine means like there are a lot of routine aspect. I'm not necessarily saying at the creative side, but a lot of routine aspect, like maybe a budgeting aspect, maybe a distribution aspect, maybe the aspects which basically an automation can take care, which is not necessarily an intelligent but basically repetitive in nature. That definitely over a period of time, those aspects of activities will come down in terms of regular exposure of people doing those jobs. The way I foresee is that people will basically upskill them and take them to an aspect which is more qualitative in nature than the quantitative aspects, and that's where probably the evolution will happen.
What advice would you have for creators to overcome failure and continue to do what they're doing?
I think it's not necessarily only for creators. For anything in life, one always has to think that if one door closes, another door will open up. So there is nothing to be demoralized, nothing to be demotivated, and probably there are scripts which see the light of the day after number of years of trying and number of years of knocking the door of the producers or the artists and the talents, and sometimes some of them make history. So yes, I think the failure. I mean, the other important part in our industry, at least I'll tell you, is that it's very important. Unlike many other industries, and I have worked in FMCG and white good and different other sectors, our industry is absolutely under everybody's. Everybody's judgmental position. Means everybody can judge our work, right? To give you a small example. Like after working for years, when on a Friday my film released, I think probably the first guy who knows that whether the day is gone or not is probably my driver, because he knows that Sarkar to film abhi subah 8:30 baje 9 baje pata ho gaya, the film is good, bad, ugly, and people will come and just tear you apart if something doesn't work. No one wants to make a bad product, no one wants to make a bad show, no one wants to make a bad film. Maybe the process was wrong, something went wrong. So that's why it is very easy, or it happens very often for us in our industry, at least in the creative industry, when they comes under constant public glare and constant public's judgment position, to succumb to that pressure. It is not easy to keep that pressure. Failures sometimes demoralize or demotivate people to a completely different level. But at the same point of time, the successful among them are probably who hold on to the situation, learn at least that what things have not worked, and try the next time. The good part is the same way. The good part of the situation that nothing is like, I mean, it is not. No one can draw a line that this is the end of the journey or end of the life. People always get another chance, and if there are opportunities, or if there are another platform, or if there are another medium, but people have to just constantly work and try to see that what are the reasons why somebody didn't like his last work and why somebody will like his next one. So you have to be as close to the audience as possible. It is easier said than done, because the industry has its own pluses and minuses, and industry has its own time of high and time of lows, and especially at the time of lows, because people just clamp upon a failure, and everybody can have a point of view. I think sports and Bollywood are the two areas, cricket and Bollywood are two areas where everybody can have a point of view. Why somebody failed, I mean, and why somebody will be successful, right? Unlike nobody can make a comment why an Hindustan brand is selling less than another, say, a Godrej consumer product soap in one particular one. Nobody knows the data. Nobody compares that via, I mean, nobody will try to compare between a Audi or a Mercedes beyond a level. People will say good, bad, ugly, but will not make a judgmental call. But in film, everybody will say what happened to Lagan and what didn't happen for another unsuccessful film. So it is difficult at the time of failure. It is very difficult, but there is no other option but to hold on the ground, make up. I mean, take the time to come out of it, and as fast as you can turn around, better it is. Sometimes I've seen many makers make one thing which didn't work and then just get into oblivion. I mean, they just couldn't come back out of that. They don't get probably. I mean, probably the world where they have been sitting and uh, they cannot. I mean, accommodate themselves or cannot think to the new situation. People has to turn around quickly and come back to what audiences prefer. It will be given that 70 to 80% of the work of the film industry does not work.
What can creators do to be conscientious, not only about their success, but also about IP protection or copyright protection?
See, I think these issues are becoming more and more important as it evolves. If you used to ask this question probably 40 years back, 50 years back, 30 years back, it used to be more. Uh, I mean, there's a lot of education has happened in the last 30, 40, 50 years in terms of this, in terms of IPs, in terms of the rights, and people have to learn them because right now, what used to happen, unlike in the past, you make a product and then probably sell it to lock stock barrel to somebody and then leave it. But now people are saying that how the rights and the assets can be split and spliced and diced, and every opportunity, even for a period, even for a right, even for a part of a right, even for a geography, there is a monetization opportunity. So I think that's what people have learned. And if people have learned that aspect, that okay, every elements of a content, whether it's a geography, whether it's a windowing, whether it is a right, whether it is a period, everything is up for a discussion. So there is no other options but to depend upon the set of professionals. I don't expect that every every copyright owners will be understanding that aspect on their own. But a set of professionals, whether it's the lawyers and the professionals, they are capable of handling that aspect. Uh, and it is
Okay,
important.
I think sometimes because we're in the world of very short format storytelling, everybody today thinks they're a creator. What are the few things they need to keep in mind so that it doesn't infringe on somebody else's property? Some instances that you would have probably come across. Sometimes they're even innocent.
No, I think so. Couple of things. One is that I mean, one thing is pretty clear that uh, whatever you are creating, you have to get all your in the right forums. You have to get your script or get your stories and etc., which was there, which was already. I mean, for last 40, 50 years or so many years, people are registering the production, etc. But the aspect is that knowingly or unknowingly, I mean, if it is knowingly, then definitely that's a mistake. But if it is unknowingly, if there is an if something is of an inspiration or if something looks very similar, then probably from the writers or the storytellers' point of view, they have to be extremely careful of those aspects because the laws are very stringent and definitely at every and what is happening, the information is completely free in today's world, so everybody can within days and minutes people can find out that what is similar to what or what is inspired from what or what is if some story is copied out from some another whether it's a book and eruption right to some in the past. There is a lot of stuff like I'll give you some example like people take a biopic right. Okay, now when you're taking a biopic right and making a story out of it or thing out of it, you have to be extremely careful that who is giving that right. If the person is alive, it is easy, you take the right from him or her. If the person is not alive, then you have to ring fence it from by taking those rights from any family members or all family members who can come and claim a stake tomorrow. Secondly, even in biopic rights, what happens that when you are telling a somebody's story, you have taken somebody, suppose the main protagonist, right? But you might not have taken the other characters which comes into those stories, the other individuals or the personality. So then those you have to balance this out. Probably you have to create them a little fictional. Probably you may not be able to use the exact names, right? Otherwise, somebody else can make a complex.
So sorry, you froze again.
Right. So those are important aspects. Important aspects. Somebody when takes a book right for adoption or adaptation. So when you are taking book right, if it is a fictional story, it's fine. If the book right is based on somebody's actual life, you have to go and take the audiovisual rights from that individual also. A book right may not suffice that purpose, that just because you have taken a book right, you can tell a audiovisual story about someone, unless that right is already embedded there. So a lot of those elements people have to be careful about when they're creating an original story, or when they're creating anything, any rights they're taking for creating a story.
To conclude, Shibashish, what would be your advice to those wanting to explore a career in the media and entertainment industry, especially from a creative perspective?
I think it's a great time. Probably when we started our career in media and entertainment industry, and when we came from other industry, it was still a little bit of, we don't know how. I mean, what's going to the. I mean, people used to judge us only by seeing that. Used to think that ये लोग तो सिनेमा वाला है, ये लोग तो फिल्म वाला है. उसके ऊपर हम लोग को respect नहीं मिलता था. 25 years back when we came into this industry, but now it is extremely evolved. It is extremely evolved. There are a lot of even from a student's background point of view, there are so many courses. Every job has been split up, and people take professional courses and comes to this industry. Experience is hugely important. The industry gives a lot of freedom in the thought process. That how you want to. It is not like a 9 to 5 job. It has its own pluses and minuses. It is not like a very. It may not be a very steady job. It may not be a 9 to 5 job. There are times when you will not find probably a couple of hours during the day. There are times when probably 6 hours you will work in. I'm not saying that all media and entertainment is like that. But having said so, it's a lot of fun. It has a lot of challenges, and it always allows you to innovate. It always allows you to think something which is not written somewhere. You don't have to follow only the rules. It always allows you to innovate at any level of work, wherever you are working, and think of an idea or think of something. And idea, when I'm meaning idea, I'm not necessarily meaning only the story idea and etc. The question is that in every aspect of work, since it is a new industry, it allows people to think, it allows people to innovate, it allows people to come out and do something fresh and gets a high on that. And that's the reason it has its own challenges. It is not a steady, it's not necessarily all jobs in this industry are absolutely. I mean, of course, there are certain jobs and etc. which is very secure and steady, but not necessarily all jobs are like that. Enjoy the life here, which is uncertainties, and probably embrace that and move on in life.
There's never a dull day in the media and entertainment industry. And that was a fantastic conversation today, Shibashish. You were extremely candid and you shared so much of insights on this industry. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Loita, for giving this opportunity. I mean, in our industry, we always love to speak, but the fact is that if it is of any use, then it will be a great help. And thanks for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.